I'm Mackenzie, and I'm here to present my integrated mini teaching unit. So the title of my unit is Wintertime, and the grade I did was first grade. The title of my painting is Skating in Central Park by Agnes Tate. It was painted in 1934, and it's one of her most famous paintings. It's actually hanging in the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. right now. So for the first one, my social studies one, I would first introduce the painting and talk to them about Agnes Tate, and then talk about New York, which is where the painting is set, and just talk about the different regions from there. So, New York, how it's in North America, and then just talk about different continents from there. The social studies standards I picked was locate major topographical features of the Earth's surface. So, for the objective, I said be able to differentiate between the continents. So for my lesson, I said that I would project a map onto the whiteboard and then have the kids go up and they could write which continent they thought each one was, and it'd be like a whole class activity. I thought it'd be really engaging. And they could identify continents and oceans and major landforms like mountains and stuff. And for my assessment, I would use a graphic organizer that would look exactly like the one on the board, and they would just fill in what they did there. So for my language arts one, I said that I would introduce the painting and then ask 3 aesthetic questions. So my first one was, what is your favorite part of the painting and why? What is good and what is bad about the painting? And how does this painting make you feel? So for the standard, I said, write narratives in which they recount 2 or more appropriately sequenced events, include some details regarding what happened, use temporal words to signal event order, and provide some sense of closure. So for my objective, I said be able to write a narrative about a memory they have in the wintertime while using temporal words and having a sense of closure at the end. So for my lesson, I said that I'd have them write a narrative about a day they had during winter break, or any winter, but I thought I'd do it like after they came from winter break, so it'd be fresh in their mind. And I'd have them draw a picture with the story. And for my assessment, I would just use that narrative. I would use the narrative just to make sure that this story made sense and that it had a sense of closure at the very end. So for my math one, I would start by introducing the painting, and then I would ask them 4 art criticism questions. So my first one was, what things do you see in this painting? What shapes and colors do you see most in the painting? What is the story of the painting, and do you think the artist did a good job? And so my standard I used was organize and represent and interpret data with up to 3 categories, ask and answer questions about the total number of data points, how many in each category, and how many more or less are in one category than in another. And for my objective, I said to be able to sort and organize things into 3 categories. And for the lesson, I would project the painting onto the board, and I would have them categorize the skaters into different categories, and they could pick the categories. So if, some are skating and some are not, and some are standing on the bridge, like those could be the colors they're wearing. They could really be creative about it if they wanted. And for the assessment, I would just collect the graphic organizer that they would write their categories on. For the science project, I said I would introduce the painting, and then we talk about why we think the season is winter in that painting, and then we talk about all the other different seasons. For my standard, I said obtain, evaluate, and communicate weather data to identify weather patterns. For my objective, the science objective, I said to be able to identify the seasons. And for my lesson, I would have them draw a landscape and then divide that landscape up into 4 parts, and then they'd represent all the 4 seasons in that one landscape. And for the assessment, I would just use the artwork to make sure that they know the difference between all the seasons. So for my visual art standard, I've said engage in the creative process to generate and visualize ideas by using subject matter and symbols to communicate meaning. And for the visual art objective, I said the student will create a representation of all 4 seasons by using colors and textures. So for the visual arts project, instead of just doing the landscape and then coloring it in, I thought they could also add texture to it. So I would already have cut up pieces of construction paper in green for the spring and summer, and then like orange and yellow and red for the leaves in the fall, and then I could do white for snow, just so it makes them more engaged and they'd have that texture to be able to differentiate more in their minds. And for the criteria, I just said that they need to include the 4 seasons. And for the elements and principles of art, I said color and texture and also space, because the landscape should be, like, they should have the background, the foreground, and the middle ground. And yeah, that is my mini lessons. Thank you.